welcoming everyone. It looks like we have quite a few folks in here today. So thank you so much, everyone, for being with us. And I'm so excited to welcome into this space Paul Coleman and his wife, Konomi Kikuchi. It's a real pleasure to have you two with us. So say what's up. How you guys doing?
Hi, everyone.
Hi, everyone.
Thank you, Tori.
Definitely.
Thank you for joining us.
Well, welcome. So we're gonna have a fun session today. I'm really excited, and if this is your guys' first time joining the Farmers Footprint community, we are a global community. As you can see, we've got folks coming from multiple places in California, over in Maryland. Paul and Konomi themselves are in Patagonian Chile, so really all around the world. And it's just, I think, a pleasure to just share a little bit more about Farmers Footprint. Again, if this is your first time kind of figuring things out with us, we're a nonprofit organization focused on catalyzing awareness of regenerative agriculture and really moving away from those chemical agriculture towards more regenerative land-based management practices. So a piece of our work is largely centered around storytelling and really creating that bridge of humanity, closing the gap between consumers and really everyone and farmers, people who are growing everyone's food. So I just think that's a really special thing to bring up is that piece of storytelling. And I think today is a beautiful example of that. I'm so grateful and excited to hear Paul and Konomi's story. It's so inspiring, and it truly is one, a very unique one that I don't think we've had anything similar to that. So it's going to be a special session today. And I'd also just really like to thank everyone here who's in the room with us. Part of this work is just becoming aware and listening. And I find often that myself reflecting on the fact that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, and just acknowledging the power dynamics of being in kind of an audience situation like this. Everyone's on mute. There will definitely be an opportunity later in the session. We're going to have an amazing presentation from Paul here shortly, and then I'll invite everyone throughout that. And in following that, we're going to have questions and answers where you guys will have the opportunity to put your questions for Paul. It's such an intimate space where you can really kind of just immediately get a question from a permaculturist and a farmer. Paul and Konomi both have been doing this work and are very experienced. So beautiful opportunity there. So I invite you to put your questions in the chat as we go throughout. And then at the end, Paul and Konomi are going to jump to getting back to their amazing work, and anyone is welcome to stick around for the community roundtable. So we'll take 30 minutes together. I find often I go to webinars all the time and I leave so inspired, and so just I want to talk more about this. I have further questions, and then it just goes off into the ether. Maybe I send the replay to a family member or friend when it comes out like 2 days later. But what a beautiful opportunity we have to stay on and continue discussing these topics and really dive deep together. So that'll be the time where we can all come off mute and really decentralize this platform and walk into that circle together in a really beautiful way. So appreciate you guys again. You could be so many places in the world, and you're choosing to show up and educate yourself and or just be inspired. So it's a beautiful Friday, and I'm thankful that you guys are here. Just a few little housekeeping notes before we kick things off. For those who are not as Zoom familiar or have questions throughout the session, Tom is here with us today. He is helping to co-moderate the session. He just waved. Awesome. Thanks, Tom. He's a Farmers Footprint community member himself and raised his hand and offered to be of service to the group. So thank you so much, Tom. Huge gratitude to you for doing this. And so he's going to help moderate the session. If you have questions throughout, feel free to message him. We will be posting a replay after the session. So that's the number one question I feel like I always get. That'll be posted in the event's comments within 48 hours after. Gorgeous. And yeah, okay. So the other small piece of Zoom housekeeping notes is if you guys want, head over to Paul and Konomi's little Zoom window. Click the 3 dots on the right upper hand corner and you can pin it. So that will actually make it so that when they're speaking, there'll just be a larger screen view for you. So you're not quite as distracted by everyone else's windows. I love this Zoom function that we can all be in a more flat, more intimate setting, but it's kind of nice to see their faces up close and personal too. Gorgeous. So with that, I would love to kick things off and just take a moment and introduce Paul and Konomi. So first of all, huge gratitude to both of you for being here today. It's so special to have your presence and the inspirational work that you guys are doing. And to just touch on that very briefly, I'm going to let you guys kind of hold that gravity of introducing yourselves and your journey to Patagonia. But Paul himself is a permaculturist and organic architect. They built the house that they're living in today in Patagonia with their own bare hands. So super excited to hear more about that, as well as a storyteller, an author, a tree planter, an educator, and a soil regenerator. So a lot of labels, but I'm sure we'll dive into some of the granularity of how that comes alive in your guys' work. And also, so amazingly, he's commonly known as the earthwalker among friends, having walked almost 31,000 miles through 39 nations, planting trees and really spreading his environmentally progressive, that's progressive work in and of itself. So I know him and Konomi moved down to Patagonia, Chile. I believe that was in 2011, but Paul, correct me. And you guys have really just been sharing your learnings with the global community since then. So like I mentioned, built their own house. We're really trying to live in a minimally impactful way on the natural environment and utilize the natural resources available from their immediate vicinity. And also when they came to their land, I think Paul, you describe it as like the felt on top of a pool table. So like, billiards. And it was just completely eroded, like a bald, lifeless dirt patch. And since planting over 1,500 native trees and over 100 fruit trees, and the collective cumulative regeneration that's come from that over the past 10 years, you guys have transformed it into a thriving food forest. So there's so much else that you're working on with the Austral Garden Route, which is a cooperative that you founded in your local region that's really aiming to advance the biodiversity of the region and connect tourists with the community and strengthen that local economy. So rather than chat your ears off about all that Paul has done, that's a little tidbit. And I would love to, before we kick into Paul's work, I think it's such a beautiful point, and I'm trying to do this in an intentional way more often, just acknowledging the indigenous lands and the context that each of us steward and live and or work on. So I'd really just, Paul, love to give you a beat to set the stage, and you're very knowledgeable around who came before you on these lands. And I'd love to just hear a little bit about that, and then I'll invite you to go ahead and share your presentation with us. So I'll pass you the mic.
Cool, thank you. Well, thanks everyone for being here, and I'd like to say hello to a couple of very good friends I've not seen in 15 years. That's Joan and Jan from Britain, and my sister Carol, whom I've not seen for donkey's years too, 15 years. And Michael Boyer, the Pied Piper of Hamelin, he's here too. I planted a tree with Michael in Germany back in 2002. So very, very happy to be here and to see all these wonderful people. Well, so from the indigenous perspective, where we live is in Chilean Patagonia, in the region of Aysén. And our region here in South America is probably one of the very few regions that didn't have any known people here from any tribes living in our region because of the dense forests. Along the coast, we had Chono people. They were fishermen. And then there were the Aonikenk people in the Andes Mountains. That is about a 180 kilometer difference, or about a 120 mile difference. In that 120 miles was dense forest. And so Aysén, up until, well, where we live, up until 1960s, had nobody living here. People, basically cowboys, gauchos, came from the north of Chile, and because there's no roads into Chilean Patagonia, they had to come via Argentina over the mountains by horse. And then when they got here, late 1950s, they were given land, and they would cut down the forests to create pastures for cattle. Our village of La Junta was only settled in the 1960s. Even now is only 1,900 people. And up until 10 years ago, Aysén was virtually on nobody's map. We used to get tour guides, and especially Japanese ones. In the Japanese tour guides, they would talk about the north of Chile and they would talk about the extreme south. But this gap of Aysén was not even covered. It was people came to here and we didn't actually realize that people could live here. So it is still a very remote region. And of course, that's why we came here. When I met Konomi in 2004, I was on my earth walking, and I just completed walking in Japan, and I was given a presentation in a dentist's office of all places, but it was quite a famous dentist, and there were about 100 people who came, and one of them was Konomi. And at the time, she asked me a couple of questions after I spoke, and one of them was, I'm an author. Would you mind if I wrote about you on my blog? And I said, no, that would be great. That'd be fantastic. And the next day, I had to go back to Britain. But fortunately, I was returning to Japan a few months later because I was going to start another walk through the island of Okinawa. And a few weeks after I got back to Britain, Konomi wrote me a message and said an editor had read her blog and wanted her to write the story of my life. And so over the next 3 months, she wrote the story of my life. By the time I got back, the book was released. And then because Konomi had wrote all about my life and much of it walking around the planet, she was interested in what it was going to be like to walk around the planet. So she joined me to walk around Okinawa. It was supposed to be for a few days, but it's turned out to be a lifetime. She decided to get married very shortly afterwards in 2005. And when we got married, I said to Konomi, I'm going to find you the most beautiful place on earth. It's going to be vast forests. Water is going to be pure, with fresh air. It's going to be peaceful, friendly. It's going to be full of nature. And so I thought of all of the places I've been around the planet. We ended up going to Britain because I thought about living there for a while up in the north of Scotland. And for one reason or other, none of the places seemed perfect. And then one day I saw on the internet people selling land in Patagonia, and I said to Konomi, look at this, look at all of those forests and those rivers and the mountains. Wow, let's go down there. So she agreed, and we got on a plane and we came straight down to Patagonia. We arrived in Santiago. We got down to the southern port because you have to take a long ferry ride to get here. And in the morning, when we saw the mountains and the forest, we knew straight away that this was where we were going to live. And we spent 6 months wandering around in the middle of winter, which, by the way, is a very good time to buy land, because if you're in winter, you can tell where the sun sets and where the sun is in the mountains, so you're not going to build a house in shade and freeze all winter long. So we spent 6 months looking around, and then we kept on passing through this little village called La Junta, and we had to stop because the road was all gravel, and so, you can only travel so far in a bus in a day. And we got to know people here, and then they suggested, why don't you buy land here? And because of our friends, they found us a piece of land, and for us, it was the perfect place, because the land is so beautiful. There's so many forests here, but the last thing we wanted was to chop down trees in order for us to be able to build a place to live and find a place to live. So the place that we found was 1 hectare, a little bit less than a hectare of land, on the side of a steep hill, with absolutely no trees, no bushes, nothing on it. And for us, that was perfect. It was like a blank canvas. It meant that we couldn't destroy anything. All we could do was make it better. And the reason it was badly eroded was, well, it was a cattle pasture, but more than that, it was also on the route to the market. So all of the cows in the region would pass by this little piece of land. And of course, you can imagine you get hundreds of cows every year passing through one piece of land. They create a massive amount of erosion. So that was back in 2007, we bought the land. And then we continued walking around a bit. We walked through China to help clean the Olympics. And then we came back in 2009 to actually commence living on the land, and we commenced building our house around about 2010. So that's the rough route that we took to get here. As for me personally, I was born in Manchester. It was an extremely industrial city at the time, and my dream was always to go out and go to green places like the Amazon. I wanted to explore I wanted to explore the Amazon, lead expeditions. And so this dream led me away first to sea. I was a merchant seaman for years. I worked on private yachts. I ended up migrating to Canada, becoming a chauffeur, driving beautiful old vintage cars all over the world, living like a king. And at the same time, the reason for all of my traveling around the world was being destroyed. That was the Amazon rainforest. I knew back in the early 80s about climate change, and I knew because I'd been at sea how the climate works. And I realized that something had to be done. So in 1988, I gave up this most wonderful job. I soon led an expedition down the Amazon, and we balsa rafted 700 kilometers down the Amazon because I wanted to introduce people to the forest. I wanted to find out what was going on in the virgin rainforest, how it was being destroyed. I came back and then, to cut a long story short, I ended up walking from Canada down to South America, leaving Canada in 1990 to walk to the first United Nations Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. And I walked because I thought this way I could reach the most people. I could spread a message to everybody, not just people at environmental conferences, but I could get out there. And of course, when you're walking, you have to meet everybody of all walks of life. So I walked for 2 years. And when I came through Mexico, for some reason, people began to give me trees. Everywhere I went, people gave me a tree to plant. I've been talking about saving the environment, giving lots of interviews, spoken at every place imaginable, but I've not been planting trees. But in Mexico, I guess because it lost a lot of trees, they began to give me trees to plant. And as I walked along, I began to understand the power of the people, because I would be given trees, I would plant them, there'd be 25 people. A few nights later, there'd be 100 people. A few nights after that, there'd be 1,000 people, 1,000 trees. And by the time I left Mexico, we were planting up to 10,000 trees a night with 10,000 people. And because of that popular support, all of the trees were given to them by the government. I got government support. Over $1 million was invested to save a local rainforest in Mexico. And because of these things, I decided to continue walking around the planet. And I ended up walking, as you said, almost 50,000 kilometers through 39 nations. And that in itself was a tremendous experience. You mentioned before, Tori, about graveyards and camping and stuff. Yeah, I haven't really talked to Tori before, and when you're walking around the planet, especially when you don't have any money, and in fact that was the best thing about it, was because I wasn't sponsored by any great big organizations or anything. You have to come into contact with people. You have to rely on the goodness of people in order to exist, and because of that, you have to be, you have to communicate your message very well. But I probably stayed in thousands of homes in all sorts of different places, and one of the places that I slept outside probably close to 2,000 nights without a tent. I didn't carry a tent because of the weight. So when it rained, I would always be looking for any place to sleep where I could stay dry. And then, of course, when I arrive into a city or a town at night, the first place I'd go to would be the graveyard, because I knew that in the graveyards, they're usually very peaceful. In fact, always very peaceful. I could always get a good night's sleep in there. And then I could sleep in places like they had a grave digger's hut. I could get comfortable in the grave digger's hut or in a church porch. And, so it made for a very interesting life in touch with nature. The amount of creatures that I came into touch with is just phenomenal. I've woken up with a deer right next to my head. I had a fox by my feet. I've had bears approach me in the middle of the night, chased by elephants, and I loved it because I managed to get away.
How could you not? I'm so glad you brought that in. It was one of my favorite things when you told me that. And so many people on the call right now are giggling and laughing, and just what an experience. I mean, how many people can say that they've slept 2,000 nights outside without a tent and made friends with some ghosts in graveyards? I just love it. Paul, I'd love to transition and hear about how those many years of your life, walking the world and meeting people and getting closer to your local and transitioning environment. How did that inform your work now? And maybe that's explained in your presentation.
I'm sorry. Pardon? Ah, yes. Yeah. Okay. I'll start the presentation if the screen's ready. I'll do that. Good.
Yeah, I think, yeah, totally. I think you just click that, you know what's going on.
Great. There we go. Yep.
Perfect.
Okay. Can everyone see that?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, great. Well, this is where we live. As you can tell, it's South America. The green bit here, all the way down, this is Chile. It's very narrow compared to Argentina on the other side. Argentina is very dry. You have the Andes in between. And then on the Chilean side, you have this valley, which is much lower. And this valley is virtually where everybody lives. Patagonia begins around about here in Chile. So all of this down here is classified as Patagonia, and this is the region I was talking about. This is where we live. This is the region we live in. And this central region, this green bit is where nobody lived because it was so severe. So that's just an idea as to where we're living here in Chilean Patagonia. Just to give you an idea of the beauty of where we live, we're surrounded by national parks. And at this time of year, or just a couple of months ago, it was summer and extremely beautiful. Lots of rivers, lakes, mountains, glaciers, waterfall. This is a particularly beautiful hanging glacier just down the road from us. And here we come to our land. This is Konomi enjoying the view from what would be our house. I think this was probably 2009. We are at the confluence of two mighty rivers. And in 2010, we began to build our house. Our house is rather different. It's made of earth bags, also known as super adobe. Basically, you fill a bag full of earth. It's a breathable bag. And then you stack them up on top of each other like bricks. You tamp them down, you compress them, then add barbed wire because that provides tensile strength. They're extremely strong in earthquakes, although fortunately here we're not in an earthquake zone. And then you stack them up until you end up with the walls. Many of these homes are built in domes. It was very good for us because we don't have a road to our land. So every single thing has to be carried on your back or in a wheelbarrow. So it was perfect for us just to dig the earth at our feet. So it's very, very environmental. The wood is local, so nothing had to travel far. And then a few years later, it's like this. We covered it with turf. We did this for many reasons. We wanted to obviously keep it warm because Patagonia is very cold in the winter with extremely strong winds. And it also looks very pretty, of course. This is the view from the window because many people think, oh, it looks like you're living in a cave. But in actual fact, we're not. We've got a beautiful big window. We've got windows to let in lights. So at the same time we were building the house, we began to regenerate the land. This is what it looked like in 2010. And then in 2011, we began trees. By 2018, we had planted probably about 1,350 local trees of around about 30 species. A person who's familiar with the forest here told us we've got virtually all of the main species of the forest in our region in our little garden. Now, I took this picture a few months ago. It gives you an idea of the size of the trees. Some of our trees now are up to 12 meters. I had just cleared out all of the brush in this photo because we have many bushes and masses of ferns, and so every now and again I have to clear them out. because of fire, but also to allow light in the forest for the trees to grow. Now, the way we planted the trees, I think, is important, because we're not planting a parkland. Usually people will say, or information says, oh, plant them 5 meters apart, or this tree 10 meters apart. But I believe if you want a forest to grow, your trees to grow quickly, you plant them close together, because then you get a lot of competition. And these trees have shot up amazingly. We have some trees on our land that are more than 12 meters, and they're like a couple of feet thick. They've really grown extremely well and fast. So we planted all of the trees on the south side of the land, because we have a valley going to the south, and in wintertime you get these ice cold winds coming from Antarctica straight up, and it's literally like someone's opened the deep freeze. So in order to protect our gardens, we needed to have very good dense tree cover. Now, this year, well, actually, no, last year in September, we had a tree planting event, and I needed to make space for trees. And we literally had probably 1,000 bushes growing. Now, these are beautiful bushes, but they grow like wildfire, and I can cut them back, and then immediately they'll start to grow again. So I cut, like I say, almost 1,000 bushes down. We ended up with a lot of material. And this material I can now use for making mulch. We can use the larger logs on the fire. I'm going to chip it. I can chip it. I can put it on our footpaths to help control the weeds. And I would also like eventually to see if we can create a big enough compost pile of the wood chips to make hot water, as a chap did in France many years ago. Another part of the necessity of living on our land is that we do not have any stream on our land, and we're not connected to the municipal water supply. We have big rivers below, but getting the water up the hill is extremely costly and difficult, and it wasn't what we wanted to do. So a few years ago, we used to have water in the stream that's behind our land for probably 9-10 months of the year. At the moment, because of climate change, and people are really noticing climate change, it could be 5 and maybe even 6 months of the year we don't have water. So in order to get us through those dry months, I began creating ponds. When we first created ponds here back in 2011, people thought we were crazy. Why would we want to do this in Patagonia, especially this part of Patagonia? It's raining all the time. But I figured with climate change, we should do this. I never expected to see that we would be in a situation now with climate change. I thought it was going to be like in another 10 years before we got to the stage where we are, but it's moving much faster down here than we expected. So every time we make a garden, we make a pond. Within a few months of making these ponds, we have frogs. Along with the frogs come the dragonflies. The frogs take care of the mosquitoes. We have an incredible amount of life living in the ponds. When we first arrived on the land, there was not a frog to be heard anywhere. At night now, all you hear is frogs. Oh, and all of the water that falls on the roof of the land, water is our most important issue, crucial issue. All of the water that falls on the roof passes from the roof beneath all the turf, because we have a plastic lining, so that all of the water flows into the ponds. Every single roof we built is designed to capture the water. This water, of course, is necessary for the gardens. As well, in order to build on a steep hill, we had to make terraces, and the terraces serve a couple of purposes. Obviously, they help to keep the soil on our land when it begins to rain, but they also slow down the water, which is very important. And all of the paths on the land are designed so that the water will flow off them one way or another into this terrace or that terrace. And the whole landscape we've designed to keep water. A few years later, that same terrace looks like this. We've been planting lots of fruit trees, but sometimes we just eat an apple and then put the seed in the ground and they grow. And in this case, we have a couple of apple trees that have produced a lot of apples this year that just came from seed. And the good thing is we never really know what type of apple we're getting, so we're getting all sorts of different flavors. Behind that, you see our new walapini. I'll be explaining the concept of a walapini in a couple of moments. To our house, as we've been foresting and building over the years, we've added to our house all these things: sunroom, kitchen, pantry, conservatory, plant nursery, greenhouse. This is because in winter it's rather chilly in Chile, so the greenhouse helps to keep the house warm. We also use the conservatory plant nursery as a workshop. We give workshops on our land for all sorts of different programs, so it's the perfect place for that. This is our kitchen greenhouse, one attached to the kitchen. And this is our first walapini. A walapini basically is an earth-sheltered greenhouse. They can be of any design, really. And we also have the center aisle. The aisles in our walapinis are about 80 to 90 centimeters lower than the garden beds. The reason for this is because when it gets cold in the winter, the cold air drops, and so it can drop into the gap into the aisle and help to keep the beds warm. In this type of greenhouse, we can grow all types of things. We can grow all year round, and we can grow plants that have never been grown in Patagonia before. And that has been a tremendous success. In fact, we've given 7 or 8 workshops now on creating walapinis, and they're being created all over Chile at the moment. In all of the garden beds, whether they're in the greenhouses or outside, we use Hugelkultur, which basically, as you can see with the diagram, is you put old wood at the bottom of the garden bed. Oftentimes they're in mounds, but they don't need to be in mounds. We put them in the greenhouses, just regular way, flat. But what happens is the soil and the plants then absorb the moisture from the wood. The wood, when it rains, of course, gets wet, and it soaks up the water like a sponge. So the roots of the vegetables and the herbs, whatever you plant, they reach down to the wood and they get water. So you don't have to water as often, maybe if at all, if you've got enough wood in there. And then the wood also gives us nutrients. It's very important that the wood that you put in there is not new wood, because that will absorb nutrients. You want old wood, which will actually give it off. Because of the success of the first walapini, we decided to build a much bigger one. Fortunately, here in our region, there is a huge effort to help farmers convert from solely cattle, because the problem with the cattle industry here, and it's among the finest cattle in the world, is because of transportation. It's very cost ineffective. It's very difficult for people to make money. And we often say that people here are land rich, but cash poor. They have a lot of land, but it's very difficult for them to make money out of the farming methods because of the transportation costs to the rest of Chile. So the government has been investing quite a lot in new methods, and a couple of years ago they approached us and asked us to become a client of the agricultural department. And so I asked, well, what's the benefit of that? And then they said, well, we can give you money for any project that you like. So I was like, yes, I'd love to build a bigger walapini. So almost a month later, very quickly, we got the money to build a bigger walapini. And this is great in itself, because it means that other people throughout the country now, they could go to the government and ask for grants to build this type of greenhouse, because there's precedent for it. So we spent a couple of months digging. It's definitely hard work if you're doing it by hand, but we spent a couple of months digging. We ended up with a very nice size Walapini. And in this photo, you can see the soil. And I think I'll let Konomi talk about the preparation of that.
Okay, so we dug down about 2.5 meters down, and then the beds. First, we put the old wood or the branches we pruned, and then we put some soils to fill the gaps. And the next layer was a turf. We dig turf from our land, and then next was a layer of leaves, fallen leaves from our forest. Now we began to produce a lot of leaves from our forest, which we didn't have when we started living on this land. And also grass clips and compost, and we create our compost from materials from our land and kitchen scrap and so on. And then on top we put a bokashi. Bokashi is a fermented organic fertilizer you can make at home. It's very effective, nutrition rich. And then I threw some wood ash to neutralize pH, eggshells or bran, wheat bran to feed the microorganism. And we even throw in some volcanic rocks because we heard volcanic rock dust is very good for the soil. So we did a couple of different patch with experimental patches, and then we did a great success.
This is what it looked like a few days ago. And one thing I really want to point out here is the diversity of things we can grow. Now, over here is a papaya tree. Now, a papaya tree here, everyone is astonished that it could even grow here. We're growing 9 different types of tomatoes. Usually here in our region, they're only growing cherry tomatoes, you know, and lettuce and radishes, just the very basic things. We're growing about 50 different things in this greenhouse, and many of these things have never been grown in our region. And so because of this, then obviously people are very interested. This year was the first year where we got an idea that maybe we can actually produce the papaya fruit. We got the papaya tree growing because we managed to grow a small one, but it didn't quite make it. But next year, we're optimistic that we can have papayas. Once we do that, everyone's going to sit up and notice the value of these things. So the Walapini is great for increasing the biodiversity of the region, because we sell seeds throughout the region, now throughout the country, and more people are building Walapinis, and so this increases the biodiversity of our region. Because we are cut off from the rest of Chile, every single time there is a disaster, and usually they come every 2 years, we get cut off totally. We don't get any food coming to the villages and anything like that. So food security is vital for our region. Oh yeah, the Walapini increases the temperature. What happens is the earth of the walls absorbs the heat of the day in the winter time, and then at night time it gives it off. I also have large tanks of water, thousands of liters of water in the Walapini. And what we did, this I wanted because I thought it would increase the humidity in the summer, and therefore would mean that we would have to water less. Also, of course, we can water the plants more easy. But an added benefit is that at the height of summer, it actually seems to cool down the temperature. And I guess because of the thermal mass of the water remains cool, and then that helps to just keep it a few degrees cooler. As I mentioned with seeds has become our major business, and it's terrific. We sell how many? 45?
30 species?
Oh, 30 types of seeds at the moment. We're increasing each year because we buy seeds from up north, and then we because we want to see if they're going to work. We plant the seeds, and then if they grow, the first year we just taste the plant, and then in the next year we plant the seeds again. The second set of seeds, we collect the seeds from the first plant, we plant them the second time, and then if they grow successfully, then on the third time we sell the seeds. The second year, mainly the first 2 years, is to acclimatize the seeds for our region, and we have a fabulous germination rate. Everyone's reporting like 95, almost 100% germination, and that is wonderful. And we are now selling seeds throughout the country, which it was a big surprise because we don't actually go out and advertise. It's all word of mouth. And I often say seeds is like gold, and just one of these jars here. In this jar, there's probably $500–600 worth of seeds. So it's an extremely valuable to us, but it's even more valuable to the region because of the increase in biodiversity and food security. Well, here we have Konomi and picking maki. Maki is a berry that grows everywhere here. It is a superfood, getting famous all around the world. We use it to make juice and make vinegars, and we've got masses of it. It's a bush, so it just pops up all over the place. Here we have another berry from another bush, the myrta. This is really, really sweet, and used for jams and juices.
It's called Chilean guava, so it tastes like guava. It's amazing.
And then, like I said, I turn the berries and a lot of our fruits into vinegars. I think I've made around about 25 different types of vinegars, and they're increasingly successful too. We'll soon be formalizing a label and then being able to market them through our cooperative that we're creating to such places as hotels and stuff. And again, it's all word of mouth. We're doing very, very well with this. I also make salts, like we ferment things, and this is our basic income. So we don't actually sell vegetables as vegetables. We sell value-added products, and that we teach people how to do this as well. We give workshops several a year. This year, of course, we've not been able to because of the pandemic. In this workshop here, this was when we just completed the Walapini. This is a local agricultural department workshop on making soil, how to make a good soil. This one is compost making, how to make compost, how to make bokashi. And another on mulch, how to make mulch and the value of it. All of the mulch comes from our land, and that's been the most beautiful thing, because at first we only had grass that we could put on our garden beds, and we had to go into the neighbors' fields to collect cow manure, and then of course we had to wheel it up the hill in wheelbarrow, so it was a lot of work. So the fact that the trees have grown gives us a lot of material that save us a lot of time, but also really benefit in the gardens. We have begun helping to create school food gardens. Right now we're working with 10 schools in a nearby town. And we've been helping them to first of all create the bed, to create the soil, and to create the compost. So these schools, the 20 teachers have been doing this over the last few months, and in 2 months' time, we're going to be given the second part of the workshop. We'll be showing them, how to grow things, how to transplant, what to grow, etc. I think that school food gardens should be everywhere. It's one of the most important things in the world, I think, is for people to understand where their food comes from, and to have their hands in the soil. So there is an understanding of what goes into growing food. Now to the Ruta del Jardín Austral, the Austral garden route. Two years ago, when we decided that we could open up our garden for tours, we decided to invite our friends. We've got friends throughout the region, and they've got farms, and everybody is of the same mind. Everyone has the environment at the top of their mind. And so with these friends, we created the Austral garden route. The idea was we wanted to bring the tourists that pass through our region into contact with local people through workshops where they could learn something useful that could bring them in touch with the earth. And so we started this 2 years ago. We are stretched over about 300 kilometers, and have different enterprises. For example, we have a 3-star hotel just a few hundred meters from us, who are doing all sorts of their own gardens, their own food. But people can stay there, and then they can visit our garden. And then we have our friend's garden, the Eco Live, all permaculture gardens. Our friend Mary, it's an adventure getting to her place. You have to get in a cable car and pull yourself across the river. But she has got lots of sheep, so she's teaching how to knit and how to take wool from a sheep and actually turn it into a sweater, the whole process. We have friends with cabins in the woods, and we have friends with a vegan restaurant. We have a fisherman who takes people out on whale tours. We have a person who sells non-wood products of all types. And so together we created this Austral garden route, and now we're in the process of creating a cooperative. And it is a very different cooperative in the fact that it's not about so much, selling food. It's connected to the tourism. So because we're a cooperative, we can recommend each other's place, and then we get people who travel from one place to another place to experience the different gardens, to experience the different workshops that we give. And so this idea has really caught on so much that it looks like we're going to get a nice big grant from the government to formalize everything. And they will also, over the years, be funding us more. Now, the benefits of the cooperative are far range, because it means that as a group, if we want to buy things, we can buy things cheaper. If we want to sell things, we can distribute our things through a wide variety of places. We can save a lot of money that way. And it means that we've come very close together, and being close together, it means that we're not all working by ourselves. As I mentioned, we give garden tours. They've been very successful, at least until this year. In fact, this has been, for us, the pandemic has been a time to reinvent. And it is because of the pandemic, there's been no tourists down here at all. All of us have had an opportunity to spend more time together to plan the future. And the future for us looks very good. We give workshops on all sorts of things. This is a vinegar workshop. We give workshops on vinegar and fermentation. And a surprising thing is we were expecting more tourists than locals, but it's great. We've actually got more locals than tourists coming. And it's a way for people, we show people how they can turn their product into a value-added product, and and then we can connect them with the tourists that are coming down. So this Austral garden route is much more than just selling things. It's about the connection. It's about creating food security, increasing biodiversity, and educating people as to the value and potential of their land. This is a mushroom workshop. There's lots of forests here, so there's lots of mushrooms, and one of the most famous types of mushrooms from our region is morel, and they're absolutely delicious. They're ridiculously expensive, and so what has happened is that people oftentimes go hunting in the forest for the mushrooms. They just yank them out of the ground. They don't do it properly. The spores, they take the spores with them, and so the plant will die off. So our friend Dinelli is a mushroom expert, and so she gives workshops on how to protect the mushroom when you're collecting it, how to collect them properly, and to identify the mushroom so you are not going to kill yourself eating it, and also to help people understand the value of mushrooms, and then ultimately to even cultivate them. Trees, well, we're continuing to plant trees on our land with the Austral garden route, and now it's much easier for us because it's not just me and Konomi planting the trees. Now we've got about 20 or 30 friends, so we have what we call a minga. That's a community gathering, and then we all get together and we work on something. And in this particular photo was on the International Day of Peace. We got 180 trees, free trees from the local forestry department. They give me free trees every year of different varieties. And so this year I wanted to plant trees that we didn't have, but also trees of a medium size, because this way they could fit in beneath the bigger trees that are now growing to create a middle story of the forest. And then this will perhaps reduce a lot of the shrubby vegetation and will of course add more diversity to the forest. So on this day, we decided, let's have a campaign. And so the campaign was, I put it out on the internet, invited everyone. Would you like to have a tree planted with your name on it, or the name of a loved one? And we'll put it on a piece of cardboard, and we'll put it in the ground, so you'll be with the tree. We were astonished at the response. We got 180 requests. It was actually, turned out we had to take 180 individual photographs, but it was well worth it. The latest project of the Austral garden route is to create the headquarters of the Austral garden route, which is also going to be an eco center. It's going to be an education center. This is where we're going to be doing the new workshops. It's going to be a display case for all of our products of everyone involved in the Austral garden route. And in this photo, our friend Marcelo here is laying turf onto the roof. We're creating a green roof. This is the first layer of turf. There'll be at least another one, maybe two more layers of turf to go with it. And I would like to, I'm thinking of planting it with strawberries, because they will, I think, grow very, very well up there. This was at the end of the Minga, where we created the first layer of turf. We all decided to get on the roof because we figured, well, we'll find out how strong it is. And we didn't budge an inch, so we're all very happy about that. And as you can see, we're a very, very mixed bunch. And this was at the end of the day. So that's the quick slideshow of life on our land. And now, I guess, any questions to come along, then I'm totally up for answering them.
Wow, you guys, I've never been on a call where I see so many people like smiling while you're presenting. That is so, look at everyone who's on video right now. Everyone's like, who are you? It's so beautiful. It's just so special. And I have to, I'm just giggling right now. I have to share that I didn't realize that nuance about how your guys' co-op is really focused around tourism. And then what a beautiful flip that it ends up being more locals coming to a lot of your workshops. As I travel, I love to travel in many different styles, but my favorite way is to do it cheap, because I find it often puts you in proximity with people in the local area. And it's just so beautiful that organically you're creating such value that people in the region are showing up and curious and, you know, mixing with tourists as well. I don't know about everyone else, but I'm about to book a flight to La Junta, and that's just me. So anywho, we're gonna audible the session a little bit because that was too good. I didn't want to jump in, but we are at the mark where we were going to hop to the community roundtable. So instead of doing the roundtable, I'm so glad it went exactly like this. This is much better. But I have a question, Paul and Konomi, do you have another 15 to 20 to 30 minutes that you could stay on with the group?
Yes, of course, we're delighted to.
Okay, great. Then that makes me happy. So we're going to scratch the community roundtable and instead do a few questions. I just want to share, because I know originally the main chat was advertised as this hour. So if you do have to jump, no problem. This replay will be posted in the comments in the event section. And then also ways to support Paul and Konomi's work will be posted as well. So make sure that you guys, if you have to jump, totally all good. You can catch up later. So that's perfect. So let's do questions. This is like way too much fun for me. All right, cool. Well, let's just start out maybe with a more lofty one, because I think there's quite a few like granular ones as well. You know, someone was wondering, what is your advice or message for new generations?
New generation.
New generation.
Oh, for new generation.
Like the youth, yeah.
So many generations. Gosh. Well, if you want to start this, it's best to do it now. This is no time to delay reaching. If this is your dream to do it, it's to do it now. There's always a way to do it. We have many people who contact us saying, "Oh, I'd love to come down to Patagonia and do what you're doing, and I want to do this, but I'm thinking maybe 2 or 3 years, and because I don't know anyone who's got a job, anyone down there, and I might not be able to get a job." Well, our advice is to come down here and then figure it out. You know, to not wait, to take the leap. I think that's probably the most important thing of all, is that you have to take that leap. And it would seem at first like it's difficult, but every step you take brings you closer to where you're going. And before long, you realize that you're actually achieving what it was you set out to do. And then when you set out on these things, I find it helpful not to think of the end, just to think of the next step, what it is you've got to do on this particular day, rather than think about what it is you hope to see in 10 years' time. You can have that as a dream, but to make that daily step, I think, is very important, because that way you'll be able to keep your energy and your vision, because it can get very tiring, you know, if you're always thinking about the end. And you know, whereas if you think about the end of the day and you realize, wow, I dug 4 meters of path today, that's so cool. And then you realize that, hey, I did something, I got somewhere. And then if you do that every day, then it's a lot easier.
Such a good one. Yeah, Konomi,
Yes,
do you have anything?
Yeah, don't try to be perfect before you start. You can start, and then you can go along figuring out as you go along. That's how we did it when we built this place, and then we didn't know what it's gonna be like, and so we just figured out when we had a challenge. I also said, "Oh, I can't do this. We can't do this." Paul always said, "Don't think about can't. Think about what we can, what we have." So that was a very sort of a revelation for me, and that's how we did it. So that's great.
Yes, I think both of your answers really point to that progress over perfection. And to just reflect with you for a moment, I mean, there's so much in the younger generation that we're seeing with eco-anxiety and, you know, Greta Thunberg. There's leaders rising up out of the youth because they're looking around and seeing that this isn't the world that they want to move into, to take over. So your work is so special, and that piece of advice is so important, I think, in a huge way of let's not get overwhelmed with that. And really this goes across, age barriers. There's no age on that advice, right? But I think we all have come up against that, looking at a big problem. And for a lot of folks here being so passionate about regeneration, on some level, likely you care about the environment too. It is a big, complex, wicked problem. And, each of us, in the video that you posted in the Mighty Networks, at the end, you closed out with this small sentiment of, it's amazing what difference, one person or two people, or I forget who made the quote. I think it's Margaret something, but it's amazing what a small group of committed people can really do to change the world. It's in fact the only thing that ever has. So kudos to you for embodying that. And to follow up, as far as, just come here and do it, take that first step. Tom is curious if you offer any residencies or apprenticeships to locals or whomever, maybe to people who are visiting too.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's what we are starting into now. Focus right now is on the cooperative, and of course we are at the right stage where we could be offering the apprenticeships, except of course there's nobody to come here because of the pandemic. We figure by I would imagine, I'm hoping by December, which of course is the start of our summer, that we can do apprenticeships. We would love to do that. But we are increasingly getting groups from universities, and we're going to be working with the Center for Investigation of the Ecosystems of Patagonia, who are wanting to bring scientific tourists to our Austral garden route. And so we're working out how that's going to work, because there's a lot of scientists who want to study the region, but also want to tour the region. And so we'll be creating a program of tours, so that one of the things we want, out of this is for the scientists to visit us. They can discover what we're doing, but at the same time, they can also identify and help us understand the science of our land, all of the interaction with the creatures, the insects that exist on our land. And so we're very excited about that.
Rightfully so. I think go ahead.
Yeah. And as for local people, actually the majority of them have been local people, and that is the greatest thing, because a lot of people pardon?
We are offering our land.
Oh yes, oh yeah, I forgot about this. We also have a beautiful piece of land not too far away, and so we've offered it to our friends who don't have land to live on. And up to now, a couple and one single guy have actually taken us up on that, and so they're going to begin farming our land. And this will be a big plus, because this land, we don't use it, we can't farm it, so now other people are going to farm it, and they will also be able to, as a part of the Austral garden route, we'll be able to grow much more produce. And of course this produce will first of all be able to go out to help all the Austral garden route, or if they wish to turn it into or sell it, or wherever it is they want to do, then that would be good too.
That's amazing. So good. Tom has a question that directly follows up on that. What are your thoughts on regenerating rented land?
Well, I think it's fine as long as you get the right deal, in the rental agreement. With our friends, we haven't actually worked out that, but we know each other so well, we'll figure something out. But yes, because if you just even grow a garden for a year, if you can get any produce out of it at all, then it's been beneficial.
Amazing. So good. We have so many questions. I'm going to go rapid fire and take your time answering them, but there's so many good ones coming through. It's just the joy in this group is so tangible right now. Sean is wondering, if you recognize the great resource that you are to your community by providing food security, building biodiversity, and ecotourism. So kudos to you. I think Sean wanted to give you a shout out in that sense. And he's curious, what other evidence do you see of climate change? And also to add on to that, someone else asked a question, how are the local people being affected by climate change? So maybe you could touch on the intersection of those two.
Yeah, that's great questions. And well, first of all, Sean, we are beginning to recognize that. It's been great. The way we've been accepted by the community, especially when you consider that we're, we are foreigners in a distant land, has been terrific. And, they've really, they really enjoy what we're doing, which is great. Now, as for climate change, it's moved along so fast. This year has been scorching. This is the hottest year we've had. It's been increasing gradually, but this year it increased a lot. Now, what this has meant is that a lot of the streams that flow through people's lands, like ours, are running dry, when some of them that have never been dry. And these streams, for us, it's one thing. We need a lot of water for our gardens, but if you are a farmer with cattle, it's a big problem, because you need a lot of water. And so this is, this is a serious problem. Even the village has had difficulty getting water. We have a big waterfall where they get the water supply from, but it's been getting less and less. And so it's getting very, very, it's not extreme. It's not like we're living on the edge of a desert. But I think the fact that climate change is happening here, which is surrounded by glaciers close by Antarctica, should be a serious consideration for anybody in the world. We often say to ourselves, whoa, imagine what it's like anywhere else. It's like this here. But we also have one unique problem here. And it depends on the year, but the ozone layer, there's a hole over Antarctica. And everyone understands, oh, that hole's it's not there anymore. It's okay, we solved that problem. No, we have not solved that problem. A few years ago, 2014 in December, it was so white, the sky, it was like we were being irradiated. And the beautiful flowers on the chilko bush, these red flowers, I actually went out one day and I could crumble them like ash in my hands. And that was really alarming. And so I thought, what's this? And then I couldn't think of anything. And then I suddenly thought about the ozone layer. So I checked with NASA, and they have an ozone hole map. And it just so happened that in that year, the ozone hole was larger than at previous times. And so it drifted, and it's not like a regular circular hole. It's, irregular shape, but part of it drifted over our land at that same time. And so I decided to have a friend make a portable UV meter, and I think it was 7 that was extremely high. It was 12 here. So that, and this comes around about the start of summer. So that along with the climate change, creates a very serious issue. That's quite scary. The forests are going drier, undoubtedly. The glaciers melting, one of them calved. It collapsed in 2016. Half of it took the mountainside with it. And we have a village 75 kilometers up north of us with 200 residents. And it plowed right into the village and killed 27 people, closed off the road for 6 months, wiped out half of the village. So it is very definitely a big problem. And one of the local problems is that the whole world wants what they call pom-pom, a type of sphagnum moss. And they're using this to make diapers. And so this moss absorbs the water, which keeps the forest dry. And so people have been extracting that like crazy. And we can see lots of it all wrapped up on the side of the road, being shipped off up north to make diapers or to be able to sell in garden shops. And so this is also contributing to the climate change. And because we have such vast forests, our concern obviously is fire. We don't usually get them here. But because the forest is getting drier, it's kind of a little bit scary. And our friend further south, he was up here a few days ago, he told us that there's trees dying off down where he lives. It's a different environment to us, but the result is still the same. Snow is not appearing when it does. We have outside a beautiful volcano with a massive glacier on top, and for the first time we can actually see the rocks beneath the glacier. So it's definitely impacting here. It's impacting the local people, and we certainly hope that it doesn't get any worse.
Yeah, I mean, moment of silence for that. I mean, it's amazing to hear in such a pristine area that you guys are surrounded by national parks, that you're creating a thriving local economy and more biodiverse like microclimate within your region, that you're still experiencing that close to home. I think it's a huge just canary in the coal mine, right? So thanks for sharing that. I will take that with me. And Antonio shared, Paul, just so you know, a resource of the Savory Hub in Chile. So maybe that will be, I don't know if you've connected with them, but that could be interesting for you to link up and start that conversation a little bit on a larger scale. Amazing. So tons of questions coming in. Someone is curious on how would you recommend going about creating an Austral garden route all over the world?
Wow. Joining us, I guess, and then figuring it out. Yeah, well, I would say the best way to do it is get in touch with friends in your local area. It doesn't have to be so local because we are remote, then we're extremely spread out, so over 300 kilometers, who have a similar vision. With friends, it's best because it's a lot easier to work together that way, and then look at all of the diverse enterprises that you're involved with and connect them, because the tourist industry is very real, and a lot of it is so-called ecotourism, and a lot of it really, from our experience, it's not. So to create a network of genuine, ecotourist, people interested in ecotourism in the establishments is invaluable, because there are a lot of people looking for the real thing. So we are actually coining it here. There's a movement here to call it regenerative tourism. So that would be the best way.
Sorry, just getting off on mute. Love that. Amazing. There's also a magazine. Regenerative tourism it's a whole movement that's really coming about. When you're answering the next question, I'll find a magazine and put it in the link. And another Farmside Chat that we did with an amazing woman named Amanda, I'm spacing on her last name, but she is the property and farm manager, and she's a permaculture design specialist, and she partnered and got brought on board to the team in Mexico, which is like an ecotourism resort, and brought in the local community and is doing like incredible work. So I'll try and find her Farmside Chat and her story as well. But amazing, really, I only bring that up just because it is so special. And I think regenerative tourism folks who are already doing that work, and you guys and Amanda Harris, that's her last name. She's with an organization called Playa Viva. Like, what does it start to look like a global Austral garden route where, people are coming down from Mexico, and maybe there's something similar to this in Guatemala, and then Nicaragua, and then Costa Rica, and then they make their way down to you in Patagonia. Like, how do we start to create that network and that weave, that gives people a place to really experience these things on a global scale? So thank you for that advice and that suggestion. And it reminds me of another question just about how to work at a global scale. Someone's curious, Paul, if you are still linked to the United Nations to help spread and communicate your sustainability work internationally.
Yes. Yeah, I do that through the international organization Pathways to Peace. I've not been so active in that, Joan, over the last few years. I've been more digging holes, but I'm still very much involved in that, and the international community. And we also in Japan, we co-founded an organization, the Wonderful World Tree Planting Festival, where Japanese tourists interested in interested in bringing trees into the deserts of China, because right now you probably heard that China's going through these sandstorms, and the reason they're going through the sandstorms is because of the desertification. So since 2008, I guess probably even 1,000 tourists have gone to China to plant trees, and they can plant probably close to 1 million trees now in the desert to help restore the desert. So on an international scale, been doing that, but then also from here, mainly from here, we just have such an outreach internationally. Just never really know which way it's going.
That's good.
And
I
I'd like
mean,
to
equally
say,
important work, right? To do it on the ground, and then also, yeah, please, Paul.
yeah, I'd like to say at this moment that I had a lot of support from Joan. You know, when she was a member of parliament and an environmental activist, a great one for many years in Britain. And, you know, so I really appreciate that.
It's good. We need friends and allies in this work. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Joan, thank you for your dedication and your work as well. We haven't, I think we'll probably have time for maybe 2 or 3 more questions. So one that came through was, do you notice improvements year over year with your seed quality? And they're wondering if those seeds genetically adapt and improve for your location with each successive year.
Yes, definitely. Definitely that's true. Oh, I noticed a difference. First, I saw the seeds from the shop or organic, other organic farm from the organic, the other region. The germination rate and growth rate is not as good as the seeds from our garden. And then I started to notice just after 3 years, like Paul said, the germination rate goes up, and then the plant itself become more vigorous because they adapt into this climate. And then the way we grow food is very low. How do you say? It's not high amount of manure or compost, very low. So what happens is they are very used to a very low calorie diets, for instance. So when they go to other gardens, and then the other gardeners put other compost and nice manure, and they grow like crazy, and then everybody send us a photo. It's amazing. This is what your seedling looks like, and it is what the seedling from the seed I saw from the shop, and then it's a huge difference. So that's why I think year after year, the more people would like to buy our seeds. And then also this year we had a great success of a harvest of Daikon, which is a Japanese radish, big long radish. And then I never had success, and this is actually the 3rd year of our own seeds, and then they grow suddenly huge. So I think it is exactly like you said, the seed adapts, and then the more you sow, and then the more you have your home safe seeds, and the quality of your food would increase.
Amazing. Yeah, I think the power of nature there is so incredible, right? How quickly it can evolve. It's so beautiful. I mean, that also speaks to that. It's a really indigenous, old form of being a part of and taking care of land, like viewing humans' role as, you know, in that caretaker, stewardship, collaborative effort. You guys are helping increase the biodiversity, same as indigenous people would do burnings and, you know, create park-like environments in their natural environment. So you see that as well with the adaptivity of your seeds. Really cool. Another question, this one's mine, so I'm a little biased, but I am just so curious. How much time do you and Konomi, both of you, how do you spend your time on like a daily or weekly basis? Like, I'm just so curious, like, how do you maintain the land, growing, harvesting, educating others? So like really in essence, like how are you splitting time between all these endeavors? And I'm sure I'd love to hear more about maybe some of that village mentality, like with people in the Austral garden route. I'm assuming you guys all come together and, you know, build a wallapini or go as a group and build something else or do a big harvest. So maybe speak to that if you can, but also, do you have a team? Do you have, are you paying people to work with you on your land?
We're not paying anybody. As far as working, how many hours? Well, I guess I'll spend a few hours a day on the internet, communicating all sorts of things, and then, you know, I'll either go out and spend a couple of hours or a few hours digging, planting trees, or building. Right now it's building, or chopping down branches or whatever. but we don't have any days. Like we don't have any weekends. We just work, and and then and then we'll suddenly go, oh, we need a day off. But it's enjoyable, and yeah, so we're not early to rise farmers. We're not very good at that bit, but we work late. and we look forward to winter in a way, because winter it's a little bit more relaxed, because spring is the most difficult time, isn't it?
Yes, and the spring, yeah, seeding and transplanting, seedling, and the summer too, because our summer is very short. So we have to do everything before the winter comes along, because winter means long, long rainy season, which just started a week ago. And then it rains like 10 days, 14 days without stopping. Well, that's our rainy season, is a winter. And we used to have volunteers, international travelers, lots of volunteers. But because of the pandemic, we have friends now from this region and coming and help us. And also the team of Austral Garden Roots. We get together some weekends to help our garden, and we go to help the other guy's garden or building. We just take turns, and then we work together as a team.
And then there's also something still very strong here, because it's such a remote region and the original pioneers and settlers are still here. There is a strong system of what they call trekkie, which is basically bartering. And that is an everyday occurrence, that like say we'll swap apples for bread, for instance.
That was good. Very sourdough bread.
Yeah.
With our apple.
Yeah, we got some good bakers just moved in, so it's like, okay, you can have our apples, we'll have your bread. So that's very, very strong. There is a lot of advantages to being in a remote community, because everybody looks after each other. A good example is like a couple of weeks ago, 3 o'clock in the morning, we're in bed, excuse me, and we heard the most enormous explosion. We thought it was a volcano gone off. So I got up to have a look, figured possible a volcano, what the heck? And then saw this massive ball of fire coming up from next door, and our next door neighbour's house had literally blew up. His gas tanker blew up. So we dashed over there, of course, and then fortunately he managed to get out of the house, and his family was south visiting somewhere else. But then the very next day, there was absolutely nothing left of the house. It was told there were whole crowd of people over there helping to rebuild the house. Not even a second went by before everybody was there. And I'm sure that by winter, we've got another couple of months of rain and stuff, but I'm sure that every single day we're going to be hearing bang, 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 bang while they're rebuilding the house. So the community spirit is very, very strong.
Building off of that with one final question, that's such a beautiful story. And that village mentality is just, I think a lot of us would like to infuse that back into wherever we're living. So it's so cool to hear stories like that. Someone had a question about in the beginning years when you and Konomi got and purchased your land and arrived in Patagonian Chile. What, if any, communication barriers amongst people were there? And I'd like to add on to that. Did you guys face any challenges with the local people, or how did you introduce yourself? How did you go about that, integrating into this area?
Well, essentially, for the first while, we very much kept ourselves to ourselves. We just focused on building, and we did that for a reason, because we didn't want to come down here and, try to teach people anything, because, we didn't really know anything about this either, so we didn't want to, come down as teachers. We wanted to just live a quiet life on the farm. And at first, people thought we were crazy. Because they would see us walking back and forth from the village every day, and going up the hill to put earth into bags, and then as the house went up, people were saying, oh, well, actually, our friends and neighbors said, oh, Paul's building himself a tomb.
Yeah.
It's gonna fall and crash on his head, and
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, he's making a mud house in the most rainiest region in the world.
you know,
Crazy.
you know, so people, but they were never against us.
Mm.
You know, they didn't, you know, understand us. And they have a saying here that is very strong. You know, when they see it, they'll believe it. And the moment that we built our house, people at first thought, oh, it was going to be damp because of all of the grass, and it was earth, and it was going to be cold. But once they came up the hill and they walked into the house, they would come in and then go, wow, muy caliente, very warm in here. You know, this is great, warm and dry. And then they'd come up in the summertime, and then of course they'd be sweating because they had to come up the hill, and they'd open the door and they'd step inside and go, whoa, it's very fresh in here, it's cold. And off would come all of the clothes, you know. Yeah, it's on would come the clothes in the winter, in the summer. So they yeah, they've accepted us, and we're a part of the scenery. You know, yeah, we're definitely a part of the community, and every single community event that goes on, we're invited to it. There is no, we are definitely a part of the community. And one of the benefits, I think one of the major benefits for us is that we were really the first foreigners to settle here. You know, so there was no sort of community of say foreigners for us to, you know, join and talk to and everything. We had to communicate with everybody, and seeing as we didn't know much Spanish, you know, it was obviously difficult at first, but you know, but they're really nice people, and people are patient, and they've accepted us, and that is the greatest thing. And not only here but the whole country. I mean, it's really cool. We've been on TV a couple of times, and we get these lovely messages. You know, I mean, Chilean people are very, very warm-hearted, and we get these lovely messages all the time. You know, yeah. I mean, I'm on TikTok, or we're on TikTok now, and we often get messages like, "Granddad, Granddad, you're lovely."
Go on, Granddad, please adopt me.
Yeah. It's so funny, you know. So yeah, we love it.
It's so good. Wow, we're getting, I mean, Michael said, Paul, you're a great communicator. Anna said, I absolutely love and admire authenticity, humor, and humbleness and humility. So we're going to close up in just, 2 minutes, guys. I appreciate you guys if you're still here, but I'd love to give Paul, you and Konomi, as we close out the session, is there anything that you'd like to share with the group? You've shared so many amazing insights and nuggets of wisdom, but is there a final message that you'd like to imprint on everyone here today and everyone who will have a chance to catch the replay as they walk away from this session? Is the first one. And also maybe part of that could be like, what are your needs? Like, what do you guys need right now? Please tell us.
Okay. Well, I'd like to say that if ever there was a time to act on behalf of this planet, this is it. If you're going to do something, it's got to be sooner rather than later. It's, now is as good a time as any. I think that is the most important thing I could possibly say. And it doesn't matter where you are. We are in a struggle, and so therefore all of our energy needs to be dedicated to that. And at the same time, I'd like to say it is not something that you have to believe, oh, you're going to fight all your life for. No, once you get involved in this stuff, it becomes your life, and your life becomes happy because you're doing something. You're doing something positive. And because of that, at least you're doing something. And even if it does not succeed what you're doing, you've done your best. And that is, at the end of the day, all you can do. So act now. And what was the other thing?
What do you need?
What do we need? Well, we would love to have people come down here as apprentices. If anybody can connect us with universities or something like that, places that would like to study, to send students here to study what we're doing, to help us identify, to catalogue how things change. Because in our region, to the best of my knowledge, nobody has ever actually regenerated a piece of land. years ago, there was reforestation to create the farms, but no one has actually regenerated the land. So I feel that we have a lot to offer the scientific world to observe how life comes back.
So well said. So well said. Were you finished? I didn't want to cut you off.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Wow, beyond words. Tom, thank you so much for sharing this ending slide. That's perfect. It looks great. I love it. Yes, nature is the best teacher, Risa. So guys, thank you. I mean, this is such a special session, and it just makes my heart so full to do these Farmside Chat sessions. So I just put up Tom, or actually was kind enough to put up the Farmer's Footprint slide, so you guys can follow along with our storytelling efforts such as this. In 2 weeks, we're actually going to be doing another Farmside Chat session, so meeting with another land steward. With Gail Fuller, who was just our Meet a Farmer. So we do these about every 3 weeks, we do a Meet a Farmer feature. And it's really focused on just telling the stories of land stewards and, taking that opportunity to get a little bit closer and really humanize the experience. Like Paul said, it's hard work, but it's very fulfilling. It's a huge theme that we see. So, but more importantly, Tom, if you could switch to Paul and Konomi's slide, I'd love to just orient everyone to follow along with their work. I hear their TikTok is a bumpin' party. It's super fun. I'm not on TikTok myself, but I love that you guys are. Yeah, and just follow along, stay connected. I know you guys do online workshops as well, so there's always the opportunity to take part in that and contribute to your work. And really, I just have to thank you. Cheers. This was such a beautiful session. You guys are just creating such inspiring, impactful work in your local community. But really it's happening around the world because this is a global community and you are part of the fabric of it. So just gratitude, such gratitude to you both. And it was such a pleasure to have you. So yeah, we'll end on that note. And thank you everyone for coming today and for sticking around. I know this ended up being a little long, but I'm so happy it was. And I will send you off into the weekend, into the world with joy and humility and humor. So thank you for leading with that, Paul and Konomi. You guys are a total inspiration.
Tori, can you put that up for me? Because I for some reason I can't bring up Paul's end card if you have it right there.
Oh yeah. It's actually okay. I'd love to. That's seriously not a problem at all, Tom. Let me see if I can find it super quick. But essentially, it's just ways to connect with Paul and Konomi, and I'll also post all of that in the comments in the event where we end up sharing as well. So here, yeah, I can do that super quick. Oh, you got it. Nailed it. Okay, perfect. Thanks. It worked.
I don't know if I did that or not.
Awesome. Thanks, Tom. I appreciate you. All right, guys. Thank you again so much. I released you into the wild. It was such a pleasure. Thanks, guys. Have a great rest of your Friday.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Tori. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.